Good evening, everybody. As introduced, my name is Callum Harvie. I am the Operations and Risk Manager at Hope for Justice, and I've had the privilege of being the project manager for one of our exciting, innovating projects called the Private Data Exchange, which is a partnership with Intel. And we've had Edgeless Systems along with the journey with us for the last 12 months, which is a project to leverage confidential computing to combat human trafficking and modern slavery. I am joined by our Executive Director of Programs, Enrique Restoy, who will open the talk in a bit more detail to explain who we are, what we do, how human trafficking affects the world today, and actually how we can bring some responses and solutions to the problem that is so pervasive. Enrique, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Callum, and thank you for the introduction. I'm going to be very brief because the important thing is to discuss a little bit of a project and how we are working on confidential computing. Most of you will have heard that human trafficking or modern slavery still exists. That is something that is happening around us. And just to remind ourselves of what it is one of the most horrible crimes you can commit. And it is also a human rights violation of vulnerable people who are exploited mostly for financial gain or simply to take advantage of somebody. And this is an extreme way of exploitation. Next again, please. So modern slavery takes many different forms. The only thing that really is in common with all of them, apart from the exploitation, is that it resembles a little bit of what slavery used to be many centuries ago, but it's still happening. So it could be somebody who's exploited sexually. It could be forced labor in the supply chains of the products that we buy every day. It could be somebody who's working in domestic work and is exploited within the close enclosure of a home. It could be people who are exploited for criminal exploitations themselves, for example, to sell drugs or to extort people online. We also consider forced marriage and early marriage as a form of modern day slavery. And there's also organ harvesting happening in some locations where we also see the exploitation of the body of people and therefore all their lives. Come over, please. So if the most important thing for us is to if you can pass across the message that modern slavery is not something that happens in a different place where we are not. We have a map here just showing where there are instances of modern slavery in the world. I think you will remember this. Everywhere. There isn't a single place in the world. Maybe if you take Antarctica, we might not find a case, but everywhere in the world there is a case of modern slavery. And actually 60% of people who are exploited into modern slavery live in so-called high and middle income countries. So we're talking about an issue that affects every single country. And it does because of, and this is maybe coming into the reasons why we working on confidential computing. It happens because of exploitation happening across borders and people being exploited from one place to the other. And more technology is actually being used to exploit people even in places that are far away from where we are. And that is an essential issue that all of the organizations like Hope for Justice who are working towards trying to sort out this issue. The thing that we are confronted with is that, as I said before, it is a crime. It is a transnational crime where technology helps criminals to either launder money, exploit other people, make sure that they are in a vulnerable position in another country where they might not really have papers, etc. So it's a global phenomenon. It's a global crime that has skyrocketed thanks to globalization. Callum, please. We're talking about 50 million people being currently estimated in modern slavery. That is more than in any time in history. Obviously, you have to take into account that there are more people on this planet than ever before. But still, we're talking about 50 million people on a given day who are exploited. We're talking about a crime, a business, an illicit business that is worth at least $245 billion a year in profits. And responding to slavery is really difficult. And as coming before I give the floor to Callum, it's very, very difficult. Organizations like Hope for Justice, for example, we work mostly identifying victims and supporting those victims to remove them from a situation of exploitation into safe places. And then we work long-term in the reintegration of people who've been exploited back into society, which is a long journey after a huge traumatic experience, sometimes really taking years. But if you look at this, the red dots are the people out of the people who are in modern slavery, the people who actually end up being identified and who can't really get out of exploitation. So you see the enormity of the task that Hope for Justice and other organizations really have in terms of just identifying victims, let alone trying to find the perpetrators and bring them to justice. That's even harder than identifying victims for many other reasons. And along with that, we really also need to work on the root causes of modern slavery. They go back to poverty, discrimination, situations of vulnerability that we really need to address if we want to stop this once and for all. But bottom line, as I said, the important thing is that we can only tackle this issue if we work across borders and we collaborate. So you see what it takes. It's not going to be one organization or one government who's going to sort this out and turn all these turn this graph red. It has to be a coordination. Everybody talks about how important it is to collaborate and exchange information so that we can track the victims across borders, that we can track the perpetrators. And if we do that, then we will be much more effective. But there are issues about that. It is about the confidentiality of the data. All the agencies involved in modern slavery have issues in exchanging the data, the information, because it's very sensitive. You're talking about personal information of people who are highly vulnerable. Sometimes NGOs do not trust government so much and vice versa. And yet we're all working together, but in a way that is, for the most part, wholly inadequate to the vast means of criminals who use technology. So over to you, Callum, after this small introduction.
Thank you, Enrique. In our responses and in the responses of other frontline organizations, as Enrique has just outlined, a huge amount of data is collected, processed, and stored in the repositories or case management systems of responders. This data is a variable combination of personally identifying information, but also non-PII data and more contextual information or the narratives of individual stories. And all of this data is extremely important, relating to the personal circumstances and experiences of vulnerable people who have been exploited and are now receiving support. It recounts some of the worst types of abuse that people have experienced and can often prove evidential in the pursuit of justice against perpetrators. But this data should not be taken lightly. It must be handled with the utmost sensitivity, security, and confidentiality. But the sharing of data between agencies in the counter-trafficking sector faces many challenges that hinder effective collaboration across all of those data lines. As we know, agencies can hold and process valuable pools of data related to victims, perpetrators, patterns, and trends. But that data remains fragmented. It's siloed between each organization, separate from one another, with very few mechanisms to share or collaborate or to know where there could be opportunities to work together on that data. And for good reason. That data is complex, it is personal, it is sensitive, and it belongs to individuals who have suffered terrible abuses. And there are all, of course, legal and moral requirements relating to data protection, GDPR, confidentiality, privacy, but also the trust of the individual to whom that data relates. But what if another organization was to hold a valuable piece of the puzzle? How many cases, investigations, or support services have been hindered or slowed down by the simple challenge of overcoming data sharing concerns and collaboration? What if organization A was missing a piece, a vital line of evidence that organization B held? And what if organization C had corroborations on the data that could prove correlation with another? And what if all of those agencies involved could together combine their insights to provide a live reporting on a global trend of this crime? And this is the foundational problem we seek to solve. Our objectives in this project in the private data exchange were twofold, which was to develop a solution that could firstly support the exchanging of live intelligence between anti-trafficking agencies, facilitate that data sharing to enhance efforts to prevent, detect, and investigate human trafficking. But secondly, to securely pool that data across agencies and across borders to support secure live analytics and reporting of the global trends while preserving the data confidentiality between the contributors to that data. Over the past 2 years, we've been working hand in hand with Intel on this very objective. And we have been honored to have had Edgeless Systems join us on the journey for the past 12 months in the attainment of these objectives. By utilizing the multi-party computational framework provided by Edgeless Systems as open source, along with the data security guarantees provided by an Intel SGX enclave, we are now proud to present the Private Data Exchange, a conceptual confidential computing platform designed to enhance global efforts to detect and respond to trafficking in human beings. The Private Data Exchange provides 3 primary value points to data sharing and collaboration. Firstly is a data matching function, enabling anti-trafficking agencies to be alerted of any potential data matches or corroborations they may share with another agency via a weighted score-based algorithm. Secondly, an insights dashboard function, aggregating sensitive data to derive live novel insights and reporting of top-level trends without compromising data security or sovereignty. And finally, encryption, the core security piece to our requirements, under which all functions are subjected to high levels of compliance, privacy, and data sovereignty through a 32-bit hash encryption. I'm very pleased to be able to provide you with a first look to the proof of concept functionality of the Private Data Exchange as follows. Here we take the role of a fictional user organization, End Slavery International, who are onboarded onto a Private Data Exchange confidential computing platform. And we're also working with a full stack of dummy data, so none of the data on this platform relates to live cases at this time. But on the screen, you will see a list of matches by the Private Data Exchange that have been identified relating to End Slavery International's data, sorted by a weighted score, the highest score representing a stronger corroborative probability that that case has a match with the data of another organization. And in this instance, we will choose the highest scoring occurrence, and that would be a simple click-through. An alert is generated identifying the matching organization along with the affected lines of data. In this case, the Private Data Exchange has identified a match on identity number, country location as the UK, and the type of exploitation as forced labor. There is a high probability that this is a match with another organization. But why is this important? The matching of an ID could uncover fraud, identity theft, or further deceptive practices of an exploiter utilizing somebody's identity number for their own gain. And this would therefore be a case worthy of collaborative intervention. But other examples of data matches on different data lines could be matching on an address that could show multi-occupancy households owned and operated by perpetrators or complicit landlords. Matching on perhaps a surname and a place of origin could identify relatives, family members, or spouses who have been separated or exploited and then can be reunited through the system. And matching on the name of a perpetrator involved could identify a repeat offender or an organized gang who are exploiting multiple people. As Hope for Justice, for example, our largest case to date involved the exploitation of 92 confirmed people by the same crime family with the same second name. And this was actually the largest case that has occurred in the UK so far. And this was all uncovered without the support of confidential computing, without the support of data collaboration with a technological framework. But if we expand that logic, if we expand that thinking to the global scale, the potential impact of the application of confidential computing is mind-blowing and quite frankly can be overwhelming. But if you were to imagine most, if not all, small, medium to large anti-trafficking agencies across the world signed up to and onboarded to a confidential computing platform or a solution like this, we could see thousands of individuals identified as victims of modern slavery that would have otherwise flown under the radar. We could see mothers reunited with their children who have been separated and trafficked across borders separate from one another. We could see earlier interventions preventing harm before trafficking or slavery has occurred. And we could see international trafficking rings, cross-border crime dismantled and the perpetrators prosecuted for their crimes. And we could also see global industries that are riddled by occurrences of slavery and exploitation begin to get on top of their ESG responsibilities, being identified and supported with accurate intelligence and live data. The list could go on, but ultimately we believe this is that this type of innovation is one of many step changes to come in our collaborative responses across our sector. As Enrique outlined, human trafficking is a global crime. It is pervasive, it is sinister, it is growing exponentially, and it is increasingly technological as well. So we cannot afford to fall behind, and now is the time for us to bring our best innovation to the table, of which we believe this is one of those innovations. I'd like to take this moment just to thank Intel and Edgeless and countless others who have continued to support us and have worked patiently, tirelessly with us, and with great attention to the vision that I know we all share, and I hope you all share as well, to live in a world free from slavery. Thank you for your time, and we can actually maybe open the floor for some questions.